The first time I heard the children laughing in Black Pine Forest, I was standing over a grave that should not have been there. It was small. That was the first thing I noticed. Not a real grave, not officially. There was no headstone, no name, no flowers. Just a narrow mound of dirt between two pine trees, marked with a little cross made from sticks and tied together with red yarn. The yarn was still clean. That was what made me stop. Everything else in that part of the forest was damp, rotting, and gray from 3 straight days of rain. But the red yarn looked like someone had tied it there that morning. Then, from somewhere deeper in the trees, I heard a child giggle. Not a bird, not a branch creaking. A child, a little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, laughing like someone had just whispered a joke in her ear. I stood completely still, holding my breath, staring past the trees. Then another voice joined her. A boy, this time. He said, "He found it." And then the forest went quiet. I should explain why I was out there. At the time, I was working as a seasonal survey assistant for the county land office. It sounds more official than it was. Mostly, I walked old property lines, marked boundary points, checked trail conditions, and took photos of anything the county needed to know about before selling or preserving a parcel. Black Pine Forest was one of those forgotten pieces of land that nobody talked about unless they had to. It sat about 40 minutes outside a small town called Mercer, past 2 farms, a closed sawmill, and a road that turned from asphalt to gravel without warning. The forest itself was about 900 acres, mostly pine and birch, with a creek running through the south end and an abandoned logging trail cutting across the middle. The county had owned it for decades. There were rumors about selling it to a private hunting club, but before anything could happen, someone had to walk the eastern boundary and confirm the old markers were still there. That someone was me. I was 26, broke, and trying to turn a temporary job into something permanent. So when my supervisor asked if I could handle a solo survey route over 2 days, I said yes before he finished explaining it. He handed me a GPS unit, a paper map, orange marking tape, and a little county-issued radio that only worked if you were standing on high ground and facing the right direction. Before I left, he said, "Stay on the logging road after 4. I laughed because I thought he was joking. He didn't laugh back. He just said, "People get turned around in there." That was all. I reached Black Pine around 9:30 in the morning. The sky was low and white, and the ground was soft enough that my boots sank with every step. There was no cell service at the gate. I expected that. I took a photo of my mileage, locked the county truck, and started down the old logging road. For the first few hours, nothing felt wrong. The place was quiet, but not unnaturally quiet. There were crows somewhere overhead, water dripping from branches, and the occasional crack of a limb settling under its own weight. I found the first 2 boundary markers exactly where the map said they would be, rusted metal posts with faded orange caps. Around noon, I stopped near a fallen birch to eat a sandwich. That was when I heard the first voice. It came from behind me. A child whispered, "Do you have any food?" I turned so fast I nearly dropped my thermos. There was nobody there, just trees, thin black trunks, wet pine needles, a low fog moving between them. I called out, "Hello?" No answer. I waited for maybe 30 seconds, listening. Then I heard a branch snap off to my left. I stood up and said louder this time, "If someone's out there, you need to say something." Still nothing. My first thought was that some local kids were messing with me. It wasn't impossible. The gate was locked, but there were old trails all over that forest. A couple of teenagers could have parked somewhere else and walked in. But the voice had sounded young, too young to be out there alone. I packed my lunch and followed the sound for about 20 yards, stepping around low brush and puddles. I found no footprints, no candy wrappers, no bright jackets between the trees. Nothing. Then my GPS beeped. I was drifting off my line. That snapped me back into work mode. I told myself I had misheard something, a bird, a branch rubbing against bark, maybe even my own radio picking up interference. I returned to the boundary route, but for the next hour, I had the constant feeling that someone was walking just out of sight, not following exactly, keeping pace. Every time I stopped, the forest stopped with me. Around 2:15, I reached a section of woods where the pines grew so close together that the light changed. The air became colder. The ground was covered in old needles, so thick that my footsteps barely made a sound. That was where I found the shoe. It was a child's sneaker, small, blue, with a Velcro strap. It sat in the middle of the path like someone had placed it there. I crouched down but didn't touch it. The shoe was wet, but not old. There was mud on the sole and a little tear near the toe. I took a photo for the report. That was when I noticed something strange in the picture. On my phone screen, just beyond the shoe, there was a pale shape between two trees. I looked up. Nothing. I looked back at the photo. The shape was still there. It was blurry, but it looked like the side of a child's face peeking from behind a trunk. I felt my stomach tighten. I raised my phone and took another picture of the same spot. This time, the space between the trees was empty. I stood there for a long moment, looking from the screen to the woods and back again. Then a child laughed behind me. Close. So close that I felt breath move against my ear. I spun around, slipping in the mud, and shouted, "Hey!" The laugh ran away through the trees. That is the only way I can describe it. It didn't fade like a normal sound. It moved. It skipped from one side of the trail to the other, light and quick, like a kid darting between hiding places. Then a boy's voice called, "You're going the wrong way!" I froze. "Where are you?" I shouted. The answer came from ahead of me. "Not there." Then from behind me. "Not there either." Then from my right, a different voice whispered, "He doesn't know." I should have left right then, I know that. Anyone hearing this is probably thinking the same thing, but in the moment, I was not thinking about ghosts or curses or whatever people say when they hear a story like this. I was thinking there might be children lost in the woods. Real children. Cold, scared, hiding from some adult or hurt or playing a game that had gone too far. So I tried the radio. I pressed the button and said, "County Unit 3 checking in from Black Pine Eastern Boundary. Possible miners in the woods requesting response." Static. I tried again. Nothing. The radio hissed, popped, then gave me half a second of a voice I didn't recognize. A child's voice. It said, "Tell him to come play." I dropped the radio. It hit the mud and kept hissing. For a few seconds, I just stared at it. Then, somewhere ahead, I heard crying. A little girl sobbing. Not dramatic, not loud. Soft, tired crying. The kind that makes your chest hurt before your brain has time to catch up. I picked up the radio, wiped mud from the speaker, and started toward the sound. The woods got denser as I moved away from the boundary line. I marked branches with orange tape every few yards so I could find my way back. The crying would stop whenever I stopped. When I moved again, it started again. After maybe 5 minutes, I saw something bright through the trees. Red. At first, I thought it was another piece of my marking tape. Then I got closer and saw the small stick cross. The mound of dirt was no more than 3 feet long, fresh. I stood over it, unable to move. That was when I heard the little girl laugh and the boy say, "He found it." I backed away from the mound. My heel caught on a root and I almost fell. "Who's out there?" I yelled. No answer. Then another voice spoke. This one was different. Older, but still a child, maybe 12. It came from the trees directly in front of me. "You're supposed to count." The woods were so still that I could hear my own jacket shifting when I breathed. "What?" I said. The voice replied, "You count, and we hide." I took another step back. "No, I'm not playing anything. If you need help, come out now." A whisper came from behind a tree to my left. "He's mad." Another voice to my right. "They always get mad." Then several children whispered together, so softly I could barely make out the words. "Count. Count. Count." That was when I finally ran. I turned back toward the trail, following my orange tape, moving as fast as I could without tripping. Branches slapped my face, my boots slid in the mud. Behind me, the children started laughing again. Not one or two of them. A group. Maybe 10. Maybe more. Their laughter moved with me, spreading through the forest on both sides. Then, somewhere behind the laughter, I heard footsteps. Heavy footsteps. Adult footsteps. Slow at first, then faster. I looked back once. I saw nothing but trees. But the children stopped laughing all at once. And a little boy screamed, "Don't let him see you!" I ran harder. I don't know how long I ran before I reached the logging road. It could have been 2 minutes or 10. My lungs were burning and my left shin was bleeding where a branch had cut through my pants. When I finally stumbled onto the road, I nearly cried from relief. The open strip of mud and gravel looked like civilization. I turned toward the truck, but before I could take more than a few steps, I noticed something hanging from a tree branch on the opposite side of the road. A strip of orange tape. My orange tape. Then another one beyond it, and another. They led away from the road, into the woods. For a second, I couldn't understand what I was seeing. Then I looked behind me. The trail I had just come from had no tape at all. Every marker I had tied was gone. I was not back at the logging road. I was somewhere else. That realization did something to me. It took the panic and turned it cold. I pulled out the GPS. The screen was on, but the map had frozen. The little arrow that was supposed to show my location was spinning in place. Then the device beeped. A new waypoint appeared on the screen. I had not entered it. It was labeled Playground. The distance read 0.1 miles. I stared at it, shaking. Then, from the trees ahead, a little girl called, "We're over here!" I wanted to throw the GPS into the woods. Instead, I turned in the opposite direction and started walking fast, keeping what I thought was west based on the slope of the land. I no longer cared about the survey, the markers, the shoe, or the voices. I just wanted the truck. The forest seemed to stretch. Every clearing led to more trees. Every familiar stump appeared twice. I passed the same split birch 3 times, or 3 different trees that looked exactly like it. The light began to fade. That was impossible. It was barely after 3, but under the pines it felt like evening. Then I smelled smoke. Wood smoke. I followed it because smoke meant people, and people meant a road or a cabin or at least a fire. After a few minutes, I saw a structure through the trees. It was an old school bus. Yellow once, now mostly rust and moss. It sat in a shallow dip in the ground, half swallowed by brush, with no road anywhere near it. Its windows were dark. The tires were flat and sunk deep into the mud. The smell of smoke came from inside. I should have kept walking. But then I saw the handprint on one of the windows. Small, pressed from the inside, fresh enough that the glass was still streaked. I approached slowly and called, "Hello?" No answer. The bus door was stuck halfway open. I climbed the first step and shined my phone light inside. The seats were torn. The aisle was full of wet leaves. The ceiling sagged in strips. At the back of the bus, someone had arranged objects on the floor. A blue sneaker, a red mitten, a plastic bracelet, a cracked lunchbox, a little pile of things that belonged to children. In the center of them was my county radio. I had it in my hand. I looked down. My hand was empty. I do not remember dropping it. The radio at the back of the bus crackled. Then my supervisor's voice came through, distorted but recognizable. "Unit 3, respond." I stepped inside. The bus floor creaked under me. I grabbed the radio and pressed the button. "This is Unit 3. I'm lost. I need help. I found an abandoned bus in the woods. Possible evidence of missing children." Static answered. Then my supervisor said, "Get out of there." I pressed the button again. "Can you hear me? I said I found—" He cut in. "No, listen to me. Get out of there now." Behind me, the bus door folded shut. Not slammed. Folded. Slowly. With a tired metal groan. I turned and saw a child standing outside the glass. A little boy in a brown coat. His face was pale and his hair was wet and stuck to his forehead. He looked no older than 8. He raised one finger to his lips. Then he pointed behind me. I turned. At the front of the bus, in the driver's seat, there was a man. He was facing forward, both hands on the wheel. I had walked right past him. He wore an old dark jacket and a cap pulled low. I could not see his face. He was perfectly still. Then the radio whispered in a child's voice, "Now you hide." The man's head turned slightly. I ran for the emergency exit at the back. The handle was rusted, but I threw my shoulder into the door and it burst open with a crack. I fell out into the brush, scrambled to my feet, and ran without looking back. Behind me, the bus horn blared, long and low. Once, then again. Then the children started screaming. Not laughing this time. Screaming. Their voices came from every direction, all shouting different things. "This way! No, not that way! He's coming! Don't stop! Count to 10! I ran until my legs went numb. At some point, the ground dropped out from under me and I slid down a muddy slope into a creek bed. Cold water soaked my boots. I crawled up the opposite bank on my hands and knees. When I reached the top, I saw a light. A real light. White headlights through the trees. I staggered toward them, shouting until my throat hurt. It was the county truck. It sat exactly where I had left it, beside the gate. My supervisor was there with 2 deputies and a volunteer firefighter. Later, they told me I had been missing for 6 hours. I told them that was impossible. I had entered the woods that morning and it was still light when things got bad. But when I looked up, the sky was black. They wrapped me in a blanket and asked what happened. I told them enough to get a search started. The deputies went in with flashlights and dogs. They found my orange tape in a line leading only 30 yards from the road, then stopping in a circle around a pine tree. They found the child's blue sneaker. They found the stick cross and the fresh mound. But when they dug it up, There was nothing underneath. No body, no bones, just a plastic toy whistle packed carefully into the mud. They did not find the school bus. That should have been the end of it. For a while, I tried to make it the end. I quit the county job 2 weeks later. I moved out of the area before winter. I stopped hiking. I stopped camping. I stopped telling the story because people only had 2 reactions. Either they thought I was lying, or they wanted me to go back. Then, last year, I got a message from a woman named Rachel, whose father had been a deputy in Mercer County. She said she had found an old file while cleaning out his house. In 1978, a school bus carrying 11 children disappeared during a late-season storm on a rural road outside Mercer. The driver was a substitute named Harold Voss. The bus never reached the school. No wreckage was found. No bodies were recovered. For years, people searched the forest, the creek, the old logging roads. Nothing. Rachel sent me a scanned newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Children Still Missing After Black Pine Search." Below it was a grainy photo of the bus driver. Dark jacket, cap pulled low. I stared at the picture for a long time. Then I noticed something in the background of the photo. The children were lined up beside the bus, smiling for what must have been a school picture. One little boy near the front wore a brown coat. A girl beside him had red yarn tied around her wrist. And sitting on the ground near the bus steps was a small blue sneaker. I blocked Rachel after that. I know how that sounds, but I could not answer her questions. I could not help her find closure. I could not tell her where the bus was, because I don't think it stays in one place. I thought I was done with Black Pine. Then 3 nights ago, I woke up to children laughing outside my apartment. I live on the 3rd floor. There are no trees near my window. At first, I told myself it was a video playing in another unit, some neighbor's kid, some stupid prank. Then my phone lit up on the nightstand. No caller ID. I didn't answer. A voicemail appeared anyway. For almost a minute, there was only static. Then a little girl whispered, "You didn't count." After that, a boy's voice, soft and close to the microphone, said, "We know where you hide now." I have listened to that voicemail once, only once. But every night since, around 3:17 in the morning, I hear small footsteps running down the hallway outside my door. They stop at my apartment. Then someone knocks, 3 times. The child's voice asks if I have any food. And behind that voice, farther away but getting closer, I hear the low horn of a school bus.